Hi, wanted to make a video here and talk about Reality Winner. Reality Winner is a female. She's in prison. She's in FMC Carswell, which is in Texas. And you can look up information about Reality. She had released some information to the news media a couple of years ago that she had information that the Russians were getting involved in the 2016 presidential election, and she was sentenced to I think it was 63 months in prison. If you look at my other videos, I talk about how there was no one killed in Newtown, Connecticut at the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. Over $100 million has gone into the city of Newtown, and no one was killed. President Obama, it was photographed and video recorded. It was broadcasted on television. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube if you looked it up. And no one was killed at the school. President Obama why was he there? I mean, how could the Secret Service not know that no one was killed there? Of course the Secret Service knows no one was killed there. People talk. I mean, you people aren't completely stupid or brain dead. You may not be that intelligent, but I mean, you're not retarded most of the time. So, Reality, I mean, the other videos I mentioned that Flight 93, which the United States government says crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and there's a memorial in Shanksville. I think they spent about $60 million. I'm not totally sure about that. They spent tens of millions of dollars to build a memorial in Shanksville. And that plane actually landed in Cleveland, Ohio, and the passengers went into the NASA hangar, and all of the passengers were interviewed by FBI agents. And Robert Mueller was the director of the FBI at the time. And he met recently, he was investigating President Trump, and it had to do with the Russians and involvement in the 2016 election. It's insane that Reality Winner is in prison for 63 months, that Robert Mueller is a free man, that he hasn't disclosed to the American people that his agents, his FBI agents, interviewed the passengers of Flight 93 when it landed in Cleveland. It's a matter of record that Cleveland Mayor Michael White held a press conference on 9/11/01, and he announced that Flight 93 landed in Cleveland. This was broadcasted on WCPO, Cincinnati station, located in the Mount Adams section of Cincinnati, I believe. And so WCPO broadcasted Michael White's press conference where he announced Flight 93 landed. But they only broadcasted it one time, and then I think some senator told them to never rebroadcast that press conference. Michael White owns the Yellow Butterfly Winery in Newcomers Town, Ohio. And like I said, there was no one killed in Newtown, Connecticut at the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, because that school had been closed since 2008. I got some of my information from Robert David Steele. He's a former CIA spy. And I get information from different sources. I have friends with the NSA and the CIA and NASA, so I get information from them. I try sharing it with people. The local news media where I live, the television stations, we have like Channel 2, Channel 6, Channel 8, and Channel 12. They don't want me contacting them. And then the Oregonian, which is a newspaper, the editor, Therese Bottomley, told me to stop emailing them. And then recently, the mayor of Oregon, the mayor of Portland, Ted Wheeler, told me to stop emailing his office. I had notified his office that that no one was killed in a synagogue in Pittsburgh on October 27th. Mayor Wheeler, along with Oregon Governor Kate Brown and Oregon Senator Ron Wyden, attended a vigil at Beth Israel congregation here in Portland on the evening of the 27th because the media had informed them that people had been killed and no one was killed. I never received a reply back from Senator Wyden or Governor Kate Brown's office, but I did get a response back from Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler, and he told me he doesn't want me contacting his office anymore. He's also the police commissioner, so don't send any of your police officers up to my residence, because if you do, I'm going to contact the Pentagon. But Reality Winner is in a shithole. FMC Carswell is an absolutely horrible place. I spoke to a woman that was in FMC Carswell, and she told me when she was there, it's a female prison. Most prisons are filled with males, but there's a very low, a small amount of females in the federal prison system. And FMC Carswell, so this woman told me that she was there and as a prisoner, and she had a job, and her job was to monitor prisoners that were held in a special area of the prison. These were prisoners that were, I guess they were deemed mentally ill. And she told me it was absolutely freezing when she would go to this job. She would bundle up with, layers of clothing and whatever they give you there, in the prison. They give you everything. You don't go in with anything. They take everything you own away from you. But she had layers of clothing on. She was wearing a jacket, and then she would sit, and then she'd have the cells that were, around her, and these cells contained female prisoners. She told me that there was one female that was naked. She had no clothing, and the room was freezing because the woman who told me this was wearing a jacket. And this woman, there was no mattress in her cell, so she had to sleep on the floor. She said that the woman had bald patches on her head because she was pulling out her own hair. This is a crime against humanity. You shouldn't treat people this way. I know, because I had a situation, I wanted to keep this brief. I'll just talk about this real quick. I ended up being held in federal prison for a year myself. I was out in a place called Butner, North Carolina, FMC Butner. And when I was there, I became friends with a man named James Vaughn, who lived in Alabama. And James, I think, is probably about 74 years old. He's like about 23 years older than I am. So I just turned 51, and this was back in 2013, 2014 when I was there. I was only there for 5 months. But James, a pretty smart man. We used to hang around together quite a bit. We would often go to the prison library together. He told me he had an IQ of 165, which is pretty high because the average American IQ is between 90 and 110. I think I've heard different reports that like Einstein's IQ was like 165. But James was a pretty nice guy. He was a pilot, a former pilot. He used to fly federal employees around. I think he told me it was like FBI agents, and I don't know, I think it was Secret Service agents. He would fly them around. Before he was doing that, he was working for the sheriff's department in the town. I think it was, I can't remember the name of it. I was going to say Madison, but I'm not sure if that's right. He lived in Alabama, and he was a captain with the sheriff's department, and because he was literally a captain because he flew a plane, and he'd fly the sheriff around. He told me he'd often fly the sheriff around, and the sheriff would go and hook up with women, have sex with them, and then James would go and have sex with the same women the sheriff was having sex with. But James was single. I don't think he never married. But he used to like having women over. He told me his place, his house. And well, to get to the point, James they beat the shit out of him, the prison guards in Butner. This occurred before I arrived. His beating was witnessed by a psychologist named Angela Walden Weaver. Angela no longer works for the Bureau of Prisons. She works for the Department of Defense. And when I found this out a couple of months ago, I contacted Secretary Mattis. Oh, he's gone now. And also Chairman Dunford, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I notified them that this Angela Walden Weaver psychologist is working for the Department of Defense, and explained to them how she had witnessed a beating of James Vaughn, and then later claimed during a video conference with a federal judge that she didn't see anything. When James was, after he was beaten by the guards, he was placed into solitary for a month, and then they put him on a liquid diet, and he lost like 40 pounds while he was locked up. Felt really bad. This all happened before I arrived, before I got there. He told me about it after we became friends when we go to the library. So prisons are really horrible places. They treat people absolutely just awful. I've put a number of requests in. I emailed President Trump and a bunch of senators, Burr and Grassley and Gowdy and Johnson, and I've sent messages to the Bureau of Prisons through the Department of Justice website. They have a form that you can fill out, and they have a list of the different departments that you can contact. I've sent a number of complaints to the Antitrust Division regarding Google, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. But I wish I get no response from any of these people when I told them about Reality Winner, that she should be pardoned. You didn't lock up Robert Mueller. It was his FBI agents, when he was director, it was his FBI agents that interviewed the passengers in Flight 93 rather, in the NASA hangar. And you haven't disclosed this to the American people. It's been 17 years now. I had notified the White House about, Flight 93 landing. I don't know if Trump knew this before I sent the message to the White House. I remember I was on the comment line, which you can, if you go to the White House website, you can find how to get in contact with, send messages to the president. And the woman asked me, when I told her, that the Flight 93 landed and Mueller was the director and his agents interviewed the passengers and all that, she said, "Are you sure you want to give this message to the president?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, okay, this will be sent directly to the office of the president. And I thought, oh, great, it will go directly to the Oval Office. And this occurred before 9/11 of 2018. A couple of days later, it was 9/11 of 2018. And I happened to see on the news that Trump went out to Shanksville. So it was an enormous waste of my time. I don't know who in the White House is blocking this information from reaching President Trump, because I don't think he would do that intentionally if he had access to the information. I had contacted Giuliani, Rudolph Giuliani, and I've contacted his office a number of times, Giuliani Partners in New York City. And then he had a guy working for him a while back, Bernard Kirk, I think it was. Bernard was put in prison. He was, I think, the police commissioner at one time in New York City, and then later on he got locked up. I think I heard that his mother was a prostitute. But I notified him, and I didn't hear anything back from any of these people. Giuliani was President Trump's lawyer. I don't know if he's still representing President Trump. Giuliani was at one time the mayor of New York City. He was the mayor on 9/11/01. And that's when Flight 93 landed in Cleveland, and the World Trade Center was destroyed by a directed energy weapon. They haven't disclosed that, though. Dr. Judy Wood talks about it. The U.S. Navy has, I think it was 15 directed energy weapon satellites orbiting the Earth. They're part of the reason why California burned up recently, and why the city of Paradise, California was destroyed. If you look at images of the area where the houses used to be, you can see that there are trees still standing, but the houses were burned down. No fire would go and do anything like that. It was a very focused attack using directed energy weapons. But I started off talking about Reality Winner, and I really think she should be released from prison. I think perhaps maybe there should be an exchange between Reality and Robert Mueller. Just a thought. And then I think, on a kind of a little tangent here, that Edward Snowden should be given the Presidential Medal of Freedom, because I think he's a national hero. Just a few thoughts. And that's it. Bye.